They became one of the most successful.
And in news just in, Maurice Gibb of the Bee Gees, dead at 53.
In the event of something happening to me.
Hi, I'm Maurice Gibb.
I'm Barry Gibb.
And I'm Robin Gibb, and we're the Bee Gees.
Ooh, you're a holiday.
Can't deny talent.
I think actually it was the Manchester police that sort of encouraged my mother and father to go to Australia.
You're listening to the Bee Gees, in a spirit having flown.
G'day, Willie Wild here. The Bee Gees' career began when the three gathered in a bedroom in their home in Manchester, England, and began working out the natural harmonies, which today are one of the hallmarks of the Bee Gees' sound.
Kiss me 3 times, the 3 kisses of love. Oh, yeah.
My father, bless him, has been unbelievable in our lives. He has been the main instigator of everything that we learned about stage.
Oh, my old man, the dustman, he wears the dustman's hat. He wears top-lined trousers, and he lives in a council flat.
Even down to little things like when you go on Smile, because if you look like crap and you feel like crap, so will the audience. Smile, they'll smile with you. He taught us professionalism.
Father, Hugh Gibb, a band leader in his own right, and mother, Barbara Gibb, a former professional singer, knew their sons possessed special talents. Barry, aged 9, and twins Robin and Maurice, aged 6, began performing locally in Manchester at cinemas between films.
My goodness, they liked us, you know. But, you know, if you look back, you realise they liked us because we were kids, you know. Not necessarily because we were any good, but we were doing something. We were doing something that no one had seen before, and that's 3 kids singing a 3-part harmony.
A little later, they began calling themselves Johnny Hayes and the Blue Cats, although no one seems to remember exactly why. In 1958, Barbara decided to look for greener pastures and warmer climates. They moved the family, now comprising Hugh, Barbara and older sister Leslie, Barry, Robin, Maurice and brother Andy, to Australia, settling in Brisbane.
Well, we were sort of delinquents. I mean, we were always on the streets.
Yes, spot a bother. It was kind of light-hearted stuff. Well, it wasn't light-hearted stuff. It's just sort of a bit of firebugs, actually, you know, is to go around and set fire to allotments. And
I think actually it was the Manchester police that sort of encouraged my mother and father to go to Australia. Take them.
And he said, you know, maybe it's time you thought about emigrating, because maybe these kids, they need space.
Once they were in Brisbane, the brothers began pursuing their singing and songwriting in earnest, each vowing to the other that success was what they wanted.
we'd sit up all night talking about what we wanted to do in the future when we grow up. And we were talking about all the things we wanted to do. We wanted to make records, we wanted to write, and we didn't know where we were going. But we used to sort of daydream and night dream and every other kind of dream, and we just talk about it day and night.
Walking down the street in Manchester, I remember Barry saying that one day we're going to be really famous. And we said, oh yeah, whatever you say. He's the big brother, you know.
It was like a pact that we made in Manchester.
In March 1960, the Bee Gees were given their own half-hour weekly television show in Brisbane.
The Bee Gees, Barry A., the leader of the group, come here. Barry Gibb and your young brothers. Now, come on, who are you? Which is which? You're twins, eh?
I'm Robin.
Robin?
Maurice.
And Maurice.
And I was doing the clothes. We used to make all the little waistcoats, and we cut an old pair of evening shoes up to make BG and gold leather on the little things, you know.
Every time I think of Mum, I just vision her behind the ironing board, ironing the shirts.
I've washed and ironed 42 shirts when they were going on tour. Barry wouldn't let me send anything to the laundry. I used to wash them, and I didn't have a washing machine. Did them all by hand, and then ironed all these shirts. So I worked hard.
In 1963, they got their first recording contract with Festival Australia. Still, their careers weren't progressing as they'd hoped, in spite of being voted the top songwriting team in Australia in 1966, and being named Australia's best group in 1966 as well.
Put out a record called Wine and Women, which was literally our first top 20 record. And we gave $200 to some childhood friends, a couple of young girls, and we told them, you know, go into Sydney and buy as many of Wine and Women as you can buy. And the next week we were number 19 on the chart. So, this is how it works, you know. We've been buying our own records ever since. You know.
Ultimately, the brothers decided to return to England, where the music scene had exploded with the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Cream and so many others. While on this journey, the Bee Gees finally got their first #1 in Australia with Spicks and Specks.
Well, we were on the Indian Ocean when we heard Spicks and Specks had come to #1, which was very exciting.
Just blew us away. And we're a week out now, you know, and we're thinking, oh, great. You know, the only people who knew were the rest of the Australians on board the ship, you know, going, hey, great, nice one, you got a #1.
So, of course, then they landed in England with a #1 record in Australia. Didn't mean a thing.
NEMS Enterprises, headed by the Beatles' Brian Epstein and his associate Robert Stigwood, were more than interested.
You can't deny talent, and the talent was so obvious.
We go to the Savile Theatre, and downstairs there's like a lounge room and bar and stuff that they have in the theatres, and we set up down there.
Robert came in his coat, looking a bit like Oscar Wilde.
They claim I fell asleep, which is rubbish.
He came in with his assistants and sat down.
And we did our club act. From even the Peter, Paul and Mary section we do.
And he had two people next to him, and then he got up and he nodded to them, and they all walked out. And that was it.
They came home and they were really heartbroken. They said it was just a waste of time. They got home about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. At 8:30, the phone rang and it was Robert. He said, bring them in tomorrow to sign the contracts. Just as quick as that, you know, and they didn't think he'd even heard them.
Their first single, New York Mining Disaster 1941, from their first album, Bee Gees First, along with Holiday and To Love Somebody, a song actually written for Otis Redding, who died before he could record it, quickly gained them the beginnings of international recognition. In May of '67, they appeared on Top of the Pops, Britain's most important rock and roll showcase. The Bee Gees became the hottest new group in London.
This is how Stigwood wanted to launch the Bee Gees. And he didn't want to do it half-heartedly. He knew that he wanted to make an impact. And the only way by doing it is actually throwing down the gauntlet.
And they were compared with the Beatles right from the word go, which really was a compliment.
In 1968 came the Idea album with singles I Started a Joke and Gotta Get a Message to You.
He's got a wonderful voice. It still makes me go cold when I listen to him.
I don't think there was any particular plan about who sang what. It's just where things fell, you know, where certain songs and styles worked at a certain frame of time. But certainly it was based on the style of the song more than who sang it.
In the space of a little over a year, the brothers Gibb had released 3 albums, had 6 hit singles, had made their debut, and were the toast of London. In 1969, the Bee Gees had recorded their 2-disc concept album, Odessa. It was released in a lush red velvet cover, which was appropriate for an album filled with arrangements and orchestration. However, as is so often the case when huge success comes, dissension had set in among the brothers and the rest of the group. A massive disagreement ensued with what was to be the A-side of the first single, Odessa. Barry wanted 1st of May, but Robin felt equally strongly that Lamplight should be the A-side. It led to Robin departing the Bee Gees to pursue a solo career.
When you're that young and you're having a lot too much too soon, you tend to you like to have praise, and praise is a wonderful thing when you're a teenager. It kind of makes you feel and do things, it kind of makes you feel superhuman, you know.
Love interests were happening and jealousies were happening. You know, I call it just lack of maturity.
To me, a lot of what happened in that breakup was due to too much happening too soon.
Robin went into the studio, and after doing virtually everything for the album, writing, producing, singing, arranging, he released Robin's Reign. The single from the album, Saved by the Bell, achieved notable success in Europe. Meanwhile, Barry and Maurice kept on as the Bee Gees, releasing the album Cucumber Castle and appearing with comedian Frankie Howard in a British TV special of the same name. The time the brothers spent apart allowed them to gain maturity and a better understanding of themselves and the magic that they had produced. 2 years on was the Bee Gees' next album. That album contained Lonely Days, which became the brothers' first gold US single.
Hi, I'm Maurice Gibb. I'm Barry Gibb.
And I'm Robin Gibb, and we're the Bee Gees.
Welcome back to the Bee Gees in Special, A Spirit Having Fly.
The Bee Gees went through a hard stretch at a time when popular music was very transitional and people were looking for something new rather than the tried and true. The Bee Gees were having a very difficult time trying to figure out where to take their uniqueness, how to reinvent themselves, you know, and still stay distinctive.
The edge had gone a little. I didn't think they were paying the right attention to what was happening. I actually scrapped an entire album. I said it's not worthy of you.
Kicking the Head is Worth 8 in the Pants, yeah. Wonderful title. Yeah, I don't think it was a very good album. It was an awful album.
Oh, yeah. I mean, your ego's deflated enormously. You know, but that was meant to be, too. I mean, it wasn't good stuff.
Eric Clapton had recorded his phenomenally successful album 461 Ocean Boulevard at Criteria Studios in Miami, Florida. And finding the experience inspiring, Eric suggested the Bee Gees do the same. So, in 1974, the Bee Gees came to work with R&B legend Arif Mardin, who produced their next release, Mr. Natural. In 1975, the brothers returned to join Arif Mardin. Out of this came the major shift in direction of Main Course. Now, Main Course was just that, a tremendous serving of Bee Gees rock and soul-inspired Jive Talkin' and Nights on Broadway.
It's the same with Arif Mardin when we did Jive Talking, which was basically, we were talking about the rock and roll jive. You know, the jive, the dance. And he said, no, I've got to tell you, he said, it's a black expression for bullshitting. I'm doing his accent because he's a Turkish chap and he has this great accent. And we had Jive Talking, you dance with your eyes. And we changed it to Jive Talking, you're telling me lies. So we just changed the lyrics around, and he even gave us a groove, Arif. He said, this is what the tempo's going to be.
We were on our way back from the studio, and every time you leave Criteria, there's a bridge. And the bridge is rickety, and it makes a noise when you go over it. And every night I'd hear the same thing. That... And I'd hear it every night. And so one night we went over there, and the car must have been traveling at a certain speed, and the rhythm felt really right. And I just started singing along with it. And it just became, you know...
You're listening to the Bee Gees, in a spirit having flown. Now, during the recording, Barry discovered his ability to sing in falsetto.
He was looking for one of us to scream in tune, if possible, at the end of Nights on Broadway. We didn't have any of those ad-libs, what you call scats or ad-libbing on the song. And he said, you know, can one of you do that? And I said, well, I had done some falsetto in the past as part of harmonies. I said, so I'll go out and give it a try. So I went out to the microphone and started doing this. Found out that I could sing in falsetto, and had no knowledge about it my whole life until this point. And Maurice said, that's really good. Can you actually do it with words instead of just screaming, you know? So I tried, and I found that I could do it with words. And so in a way, he was part of that discovery of the whole fever syndrome, whatever that sound was. And that was really the change for us.
The brothers Gibb were back on top, commercially and creatively. Main Course went gold and platinum. Both Nights on Broadway and Jive Talkin' shot to #1, and Jive Talkin' was a gold single. 1976's Children of the World went gold and platinum. You Should Be Dancing and Love So Right were gold singles, and You Should Be Dancing went to #1 as well. Yet amazingly, the true heights was still to come.
We were getting songs ready for our new studio album, which would be the follow-up to Children of the World, and it was imperative that we got that right instead of just, you know, stopping now and doing a few songs for a movie. Unless, of course, we knew it was going to be a huge film, which was no guarantee, of course.
Robert Stigwood was developing a movie about the dance culture in New York City, Saturday Night Fever.
You know, he told us about this guy who works in a paint shop on the other side of the bridge in Brooklyn, you know, and he blows his wages every Saturday night at a club and wins a dance competition. We thought, nice one, Rob.
Those songs were actually written before the film was even mentioned to us. How Deep Is Your Love, If I Can't Have You, Night Fever, Staying Alive, More Than a Woman, all written before we'd seen the film.
And they played me some of the songs that they'd written for Saturday Night Fever.
George Martin.
And I couldn't believe that they'd done this. I mean, the stuff was so good. It was fantastic. I thought it was written by somebody else. And I didn't tell them that. Saturday Night Fever score was unique in taking the best of really funky black music and together with very tuneful white music, and melding the two things together in a style that was irresistible. You know, even old men like me would get on the floor and move because you just couldn't stop it.
The soundtrack to Saturday Night Fever became the best-selling album ever, a title it held until Michael Jackson's Thriller took over, and it remains the best-selling soundtrack album ever.
And that was an incredible thing for me, because I used to love Sound of Music, and that was #1 for years. And I never thought we'd ever knock Rodgers and Hammerstein off, you know. I mean, we got inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, and above our picture was Rodgers and Hammerstein. I can't believe that we're with these people, or even classed in the same class. You know, that was an amazing thing for me.
While their songs from Saturday Night Fever climbed the charts, the brothers mixed and readied their next album. Here at last, Bee Gees Live. Night Fever and Stayin' Alive both were #1 hits, and both went gold and platinum. If I Can't Have You, written by the brothers and recorded by Yvonne Elliman, also was a #1 gold single. The Saturday Night Fever soundtrack album itself was #1 for 24 weeks. How Deep Is Your Love went to #1 and went gold before the Saturday Night Fever movie was even released.
So it was about 50 million for that one.
50 million?
Yeah.
It's just extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's still the biggest selling soundtrack in history, I bet.
What did you think of the movie?
I didn't see the movie very much. I still haven't seen the movie all the way through. And that's strange.
Saturday Night Fever took the Bee Gees from being merely chart-topping stars to absolute superstars. In 1978, the Bee Gees had the #1 album and 5 songs in the top 10 at the same time. This is incredible. They also helped Brother Andy achieve his own stardom as I Just Want to Be Your Everything hit #1 in 1976.
You're listening to the Bee Gees in a spirit having...
Hi, I'm Maurice Gibb. I'm Barry Gibb.
And I'm Robin Gibb, and we're the Bee Gees.
Welcome back to the Bee Gees in Special, a spirit having flown.
The brothers begin to work on the movie Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band with Peter Frampton. The Bee Gees, or their music, were everywhere. Movies, buckles, necklaces, school lunch boxes, notebooks and more. As the filming of Sgt. Pepper wore on, it became increasingly clear to all three that with only the music of the Beatles to advance the storyline and with no dialogue, the movie was a dog.
The craziness of Hollywood, all these pop artists thrown together, making a movie where they weren't allowed to speak, and it was just madness.
The Bee Gees tried to get out of the movie several times, but they had to remain. The film was pounded at the box office because Robert Stigwood had dared to defile, in critics' words, a classic in such an offbeat way.
It was a terrible film. The greatest thing about doing the Sgt. Pepper film was working with George Martin. To recreate the songs he originally did with the Beatles was wonderful.
They were so professional, all three of them, and whenever they came into the studio, they would joke a lot. They would fool around. But once the red light was on, they were in there, and they were dead serious. And they were very precise, extremely precise. Their harmony singing was, they were very careful about intonation, impeccable about precision of ensemble. And in fact, they wanted to do things over and over again, much more than I did. I would be inclined to say, well, it's human, it's lovely. Oh no, we've got to get it right. And when they double-tracked so accurately, you could hardly tell it was double-tracking. They were very, very good.
The brothers went back to the studio and from there emerged with Spirits Having Flown. A critically acclaimed 1979 classic. Spirits stayed at #1 for 6 weeks and produced the hits Tragedy, Too Much Heaven and Love You Inside Out. Once the tour was finished, the brothers took a breather to write and produce. While all three wrote for the album, Barry handled the production and sang on Barbra Streisand's wildly successful Guilty album, the most successful album of her career. But anything which becomes extraordinary in the US soon becomes a target for the critics.
Eventually, when something like that becomes so successful, it becomes an albatross around your neck.
For about 10 years, we had some kind of leprosy,
When you have 5 of your songs in the top 10 in Billboard, and in every chart in the world, people are likely to get a bit fed up after a while, Even Even Michael had it, you know, with the Thriller album. I mean, enough's enough. Come on, they're having Michael Jackson free weekends. Well, they had BG free weekends in different radio stations over America, particularly in Chicago. I mean, that was a really, disco's dead, kill the disco kings. Things like this were going on, you know. It became pretty frightening.
Sadly, March of 1988 brought the tragedy of younger brother Andy's death from drug-related problems.
I've often said, although I know it's not entirely true, I've often said that Hollywood is the reason that Andy died, you know. It's a very dangerous environment for someone that's susceptible to drugs.
I think the times are when you get so much success and people just say, well, you're not allowed to have any more. You know, that's it now. It's time to rip you apart. Things like when Andy died, you know, I mean, the press on that stuff was a killer. I felt like, how could they? You know, you feel like you just want to say sod it all, you know. If I wasn't doing this, I wouldn't get this attention.
From that, the brothers drew resolve about what their careers and their music meant to people. Thus was born 1989's One, dedicated in its entirety to Andy. One was the album which returned the Brothers Gibb to the charts, and with a vengeance. All the renewed interest let the Bee Gees reach out and take their first world tour since Spirit's Having Flown tour of 1979. In 1996, on the back of yet another hit album, Still Waters, and the single Alone, it was announced that the Bee Gees would be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in May 1997. Finally, the Bee Gees would be acknowledged for their incredible contributions to rock and roll.
So suddenly the Bee Gees are not so bad after all, you know. That's sort of happening now. And I'm bewildered again, you know. Oh, now it's okay to like us, you know.
December 1999 marked the 50th birthdays of twins Maurice and Robin, with a massive celebration that became the last show in the amazing one-night-only tour on New Year's Eve. As the Bee Gees marched headlong and strong into their 5th decade and a new millennium, success came yet again with a new album, This Is Where I Came In. And the title track sent them back to the top of the charts all around the world. Tragically, though, this would be their last collaboration as a trio, as Maurice Gibb sadly died in Miami's Mount Sinai Hospital on January the 12th at 1 a.m. from complications causing a fatal heart attack during surgery. He was 53. While Barry and Robin claim they will keep the Bee Gees' legacy alive, Maurice can rest easily knowing that he and his brothers have managed to create a success story that may never be matched. With over 40 hit singles spanning 5 decades, the Bee Gees remain a true pop music phenomenon.
We don't say goodbye.
The three harmonies as such was a beautiful sound. We wanted to do that. We wanted to do that. And we started doing it.
You can't deny talent.
But we always had to put humour into the act, you know. For years, actually, Robin was the comedian, and I was the straight man. And Barry was the older brother.
I think it was about a year after we first started it, having fun, that we realised it was what we wanted to do for the rest of our lives.
You're listening to the Bee Gees in A Spirit Having Flown.